Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Don't Forget the Popcorn. Today, we will be discussing the greatest actors of all time. These are not who my favorites are, but the guys who have delivered performances that have elevated the films they are in, inspired others, and stood the test of time over the years. Just like with the directors, I will be breaking this into two videos 10 actors, 10 through 6 in video 1, and 5 through 1 in video 2, with honorable mentions. This video will be males only. I felt it wasn't fair to do a list with them combined because most major award publications separate them. So I will do the same model. I will do the same for the ladies in a future series, and that's a promise. So let's get into the content. These are the best actors of all time. Number 10, Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart was born May 1908 in Pennsylvania. He started acting while attending Princeton University. He began his career as a stage actor on Broadway and summer stock productions. He made his way into features in 1935 and in 1938 had his breakout performance in Frank Capra's You Can't Take It With You, a director he frequently collaborated with. In 1940, he won his only Oscar out of 5 nominations for his work on The Philadelphia Story, a fun little screwball comedy reminiscent of the times. Jimmy took a little break from acting to enlist in the war when the U.S. entered in 1941. He came back to acting on one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, which earned him an Academy Award nomination. Stewart went on to star in Winchester 73, The Glenn Miller Story, and Naked Spur in collaborations with Anthony Mann. He was a frequent collaborator with the great Hitchcock, starring in Rope, Rear Window, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and the legendary Vertigo. Stewart had a career from 1935 to 1991. Known for his distinct drawl, Stewart played the all-American figure and morally conscious characters. He wasn't very flashy or over the top, but he knew how to put on a performance that would build the persona of his characters over the span of the film, ultimately leading to some of the best character development we've seen in cinema history. Stewart's everyday man persona made him one of the most believable and relatable actors of his time period. The best Jimmy Stewart performances. Number 1, Vertigo, my personal favorite. Jimmy plays a very vulnerable, very naive character who gets obsessed with something and he ultimately will do anything to get what he wants, no matter what it's doing to his own psyche or the psyches of those around him. Jimmy gives a heartfelt performance in this because you feel his pain, yet it's hard to empathize with him in these situations, yet he makes you want to. This film would not be the same without the performance that Stewart delivered here. He stole the show here. Kim Novak is great as his co-star, but this is Jimmy's film. Jimmy makes this film so great, so special, and is a big reason why it's one of the greatest films of all time. Number 2, It's a Wonderful Life. This is definitely probably Jimmy's most relatable and probably his favorite amongst the people. He plays a man who is determined to do right by the people. And Jimmy ultimately is very upset and sad and wants so much more for what's going on around him. And you want that for him as well. And he's going through these trials and tribulations that make you feel for him. And he's seeing the reflection of his own life and seeing, what life would be like without him. And the way he's going about it and the emotions he's portraying here, it feels so real. You feel like this is a real story. And when obviously it's fake as you're watching it, but it feels real. And Jimmy plays a really great hero in this story. Someone everyone can rally behind, someone everyone wants to succeed and wants to be happy. And we ultimately want Jimmy's character to come out on top in this. This is one of the best Christmas movies of all time. And a big reason for that is Jimmy's performance. Number 3, Rear Window, another one of his Hitchcock collaborations. Rear Window, if for any reason alone, Jimmy gives a great performance sitting in the same spot the entire film. His leg's broken. It's in a cast. He's in a wheelchair. He cannot move. So Jimmy is literally sitting in a little apartment the entire film while still delivering one of the best performances you're ever going to see from a guy who doesn't even move. There's no action going on here. He's not doing anything insane. Jimmy is just sitting here delivering these lines with grace, elegance, and he's making you believe everything that's going on around. And this is just a special film. I got to give credit to Hitchcock here. Hitchcock elevated this film, obviously, to what it is. But Jimmy's performance definitely keeps it pacing nicely. If you would have had a lesser actor here, this movie could have been boring. But Jimmy makes sure this film stays entertaining throughout, even though there's not a ton going on. Number 9, Toshiro Mifune. Toshiro Mifune was born April 1920 in Tokyo, Japan. In Mifune's youth, he worked in his father's photography shop, and when he was 19, he was drafted into the Japanese military to fight in the war. His friend that worked in the photography department of Toho Productions sent Mifune's resume in for a job after the war. He was accepted, but was encouraged to act after filmmaker Kajiro Yamamoto took a liking to him, which led to his first feature, Shimbaka Jidai. His life would really change when meeting director Akira Kurosawa. Kurosawa saw him perform and was very impressed with his training and natural acting abilities. This led the pair to go on and make 16 feature films together, including some of the greatest of all time, like Rashomon, The Idiot, Seven Samurai, Thorn of Blood, The Hidden Fortress, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, The High and the Low, The Red Beard, among others. Mifune had one of the best film and TV careers, spanning over 50 years, appearing in over 100 films. Mifune is known for his portrayal of battered and troubled samurai characters who ultimately overcome an adversity, or is the hero of the story. Within these roles, Toshiro has shown some of the widest range in acting abilities. He can play emotionally beaten, sad, down-and-out characters, or play the comic relief with his perfect comedic timing and witty charm. He can shift emotions in seconds seamlessly, blending into these roles, making these performances look effortless. His collaborations with Kurosawa brought in a lot of new international eyes to Japanese cinema, making him one of the most recognizable Japanese actors of all time and one of my personal favorites. The best Toshiro Mifune performances. Number 1, The Seven Samurai. This film here, particularly this performance from Mifune, shows range of acting all over it. You got a 3.5 hour epic here, so he has the best character development in the film. When you first see him, and about the first hour, you feel a certain way about him, and by the end, you feel an entirely different way about this character. He is hilarious in this role. He makes you laugh so much. He makes you so angry. He pisses you off. And then he breaks your heart and makes you cry, all in the same performance. And I'm telling you, there's just not many actors who can portray this kind of range among film. It's just not common. The way he can turn it on and off in seconds is just, it's mind blowing. The talent level this man has is just, it's second to none. Number 2, The High and the Low, which would probably be my personal favorite performance of his. The reason this performance of his is my favorite is because at the time when I saw it, I was very used to seeing him play samurai type of characters, more of the rugged and rough characters. And in this film, you see him play very calculated, very balanced, very detail oriented man who is very strong on his morals and convictions. And he is very particular in the way he moves and the decisions he makes. And when you see him spreading his emotions across this character and developing this character to the point where you kind of wish this was your dad almost, it's just mind blowing. And he just gives you one of the most believable performances I've ever seen. This movie feels so real. This feels like a film that could actually happen, even though it is a little bit over the top in the plot. This feels real, and it's because of his performance and the way he goes about approaching this character with such grace and elegance. It just shows you the maturity of where he was at the time in his career and just the amount of talent that lies in this man. Number 3, Yojimbo. And this one was hard to pick for a third one. And I went back and forth between Throne of Blood, Red Beard, Hidden Fortress, so many. But I ultimately landed on Yojimbo because to me, I find this role hilarious. And I think this is Toshiro stripped down to just being himself and being probably the most human he's ever been in a film. As far as a relatable human, he's a silly guy. He's out for himself. He's selfish. He wants money, but he does ultimately have some character development. He does ultimately do something that is greater than oneself. And he goes hard in this movie. He's just a badass with chopping dudes down and just he's awesome in this film. And this film for me is one of the more fun Toshiro roles. If you want to just have fun watching a Kurosawa and Toshiro collaboration. Number 8, Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo was born in LA in November of 1974. He began his career in the 1980s, appearing in TV commercials and some recurring roles in television series, particularly Growing Pains in the late 1991. His first major film role came in 1993's This Boy's Life, starring alongside the great Robert De Niro. His breakout role came in 1993's What's Eating Gilbert Grape, where he played a young child with developmental disabilities. This performance earned him his first Oscar nomination. He achieved megastardom for his role in the super hit Titanic in 1997, which was the highest grossing film for many years. After this role, his career took off and Leo took on more challenging roles. In 2002, he starred as Frank Abagnale in Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can and released his first of many collaborations with Martin Scorsese, Gangs of New York. The pair have collaborated on some of the best films of the 21st century with The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, Wolf of Wall Street, and the upcoming Killers of the Moonflower. His other high-profile roles include Revolutionary Road, Blood Diamond, Inception, Django Unchained, The Revenant, which he finally won his Oscar for, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Leo is known for his roles in historical and period dramas, often playing real-life characters throughout history. He is one of the highest earning actors, and his films have grossed over $7 billion worldwide and is one of the most recognizable names in Hollywood. Leo is still currently one of Hollywood's most sought-after leading men to date with an extensive filmography. He has been nominated 7 times for Academy Awards. The best Leonardo DiCaprio roles. Number 1, The Aviator. Now, if you guys have watched any of my other videos or have checked out my TikTok, I've advocated for The Aviator because it is one of the best films ever made. And I do find it very underrated, and I think this is one of the most underrated Leonardo performances. He should have won his first Oscar for this movie. Shouldn't have took him all the way into The Revenant. Leo delivers one of his most vulnerable characters, yet is one of his most confident characters. He's a man stricken with OCD that gradually gets worse as his film progresses. And as it does, you just feel this man breaking and stripping down. You see Leonardo jump out of himself and really become something else in this film. It's just one of those movies where you feel like no other guy could play this role. He dominates the screen in this film. He grabs you. Even if you're not interested in the subject matter of this film, Leonardo's performance alone is worth watching this movie for. It is my favorite of his, honestly. It really is. And I like a lot of Leo movies. And I know he's an actor that a lot of major film enthusiasts don't really care for, but I personally do like Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think he is one of the better ones to do it, especially in the 21st century. This film will show you why. Number 2, The Wolf of Wall Street. And I picked The Wolf of Wall Street because I think this is Leo's funniest role, next to maybe Calvin Candy and Django Unchained. Leo in this movie is just hilarious. You get to see this man doing crazy drugs, getting belligerent, acting ignorant, cussing up a storm, being insane, and he does it all so eloquently, and he does it with such grace, and you just love him, and he's such a villain in this movie, but you still root for him. You root for him playing Jordan, and you want him to ultimately be all right, even though he's a total a-hole. Leo in this movie, I felt like he really got outside of himself and really embodied this character. Honestly, more than maybe any of the other characters he's portrayed over time, which he's portrayed tons of, real life people. This film is just great, and his performance is definitely what carries it to the finish line. Obviously, Scorsese's direction is amazing too, but this performance from him is just so funny and so timeless. Leo, thank you for that one. Number three, and I know this is going to be controversial, but I'm going with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I absolutely love Leonardo in this movie. I love this film, and he is a big reason why. He plays another character similar to The Aviator, where yes, he has star status and he is someone to be confident, but he's very vulnerable and confident in himself. And Rick Dalton in this movie is just freaking hilarious. He's so funny, but what makes him funny is he's like, laugh at my pain. He's a sad guy. He's going through a lot. He has a lot of personal demons he's trying to figure out, and he masks it all with alcohol and humor. But it ultimately gives us one of the most stripped down, vulnerable Leonardo performances that you just can't help but love. And if you've seen the movie, the scene where he's acting with the young girl and he just stretches his emotions out through that scene and he lays it all on the line. In the context of the film, the character that he's playing, you feel like this is Leo in real life, really giving it to you, showing you why he is who he is. And it's something about this role that just has a realness to it. This really feels like Leonardo. And although he's one of the most successful actors ever and has been killing the game for over 20 years, it feels like he's like a Tom Brady, still playing with this chip on his shoulder and still got something to prove, even though he has nothing left to prove. Guys, if you have not seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, definitely check it out. All right, guys, let's get into our intermission before we close this out. First thing, guys, if you're enjoying the content, like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out. If you guys like the clips, I share a lot of these on TikTok, and we do some fun stuff over there, answer questions. Links will be down below if you'd like to do that. I have a streaming recommendation for you. And since I was just talking about this film, we might as well keep it related to the content. I'm going to go with 2004, The Aviator, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by Martin Scorsese. This is streaming on HBO Max. This movie's a little bit long. It's about 3 hours, but all three are very well worth it. You get one of the best Leonardo performances, one of the best Cate Blanchett performances, with some beautiful direction from Scorsese and some brilliant cinematography throughout the film. You get some awesome flight sequences, and you get some fun little party dinner scenes that are just to die for. Guys, this movie here, I feel, is very underrated. Underrated in the sense of it's not talked about a lot. It made money and, it got all kinds of award love, but this film here, people never bring it up anymore. It's almost 20 years old, but I think it's a film that still holds up very much today. Guys, check out The Aviator on HBO Max if you haven't seen it. All right, let's get back into the content. Number 7, Denzel Washington. Denzel, as we all simply know him as, was born December 1954 in Mount Vernon, New York. Denzel started his career on the stage doing Broadway performances in the late 70s. He rose to prominence on the show St. Elsewhere in the 80s and landed a few smaller roles throughout the decade until his breakout performance came in 1989's Glory, which he earned his first and deserved Academy Award for. In the 1990s, Denzel established himself as a leading man, starring in Spike Lee's Malcolm X, Much Ado About Nothing, The Pelican Brief, Crimson Tide, Philadelphia, and The Hurricane. In 2001, he delivered one of his most bone-chilling and popular performances as Alonzo in Training Day, which won him his second Oscar. He also played Coach Boone in Remember the Titans, Melvin B. Tolson in The Great Debaters, and Frank Lucas in American Gangster. He played an alcoholic pilot in the movie Flight, which earned him another Oscar nomination. He directed and starred in the critically acclaimed screen adaptation of Fences, which earned him another Oscar nomination for acting and one for Best Picture. Denzel is known as one of the classiest and most charismatic actors of all time. His suave and clean acting style and charm led him to be one of the most talked about and desired actors of the 90s and 2000s. He plays his roles with elegance and grace, leading viewers to very realistic and believable performances. When Denzel performs, he makes you think there is no other actor who could portray what we are seeing on screen. Denzel has won numerous awards for his acting and is one of the most celebrated of all time and one of my personal favorites. The best Denzel Washington roles. Number one, Training Day, and it's my favorite. And it's probably most people's favorite Denzel role. Alonzo Harris is a psycho freak, sadistic a-hole that you cannot keep your eyes off of. Denzel really changed the game with this role because he came out as always the hero. Denzel was a squeaky clean character in most films. He was always the hero, doing the right thing, morally guy. But this film, you see him killing, robbing, stealing, cheating, slashing, doing everything that you would never expect to see of Denzel at the time. When I first saw it, I saw it in theaters with my mother and a friend of mine back in 2001. I was very, very young. But I knew what I was seeing at the time was something very special, and I knew, wow, I was used to seeing Denzel play these very calculated, calm, and collective roles where he's kind of a lunatic in this movie and doing anything to get what he wants and does not mind stepping on anyone to do it. I think this is one of the most deserved Oscar wins of all time. I don't think there was anyone else who could have took it from him that year. He bodied this performance. He killed it. And he showed us a side to him that we never knew was there. Number two, Malcolm X. Denzel, man, this performance here, Denzel shows us two sides of Malcolm X because I think Spike did a great job of splitting this story up into the Malcolm most people don't know and the Malcolm most people do know. Denzel portrays both of them perfectly, showing a drug dealing gangster who, ultimately changes himself and becomes the Malcolm that we know and love today, or may not love, depending on who you are. He just transforms into this character. He's scary in this movie. He makes you nervous, but then he uplifts you. He makes you feel good. Denzel does everything any type of character could do all in one performance here. It's insanity. It's insanity. The way he was able to shift himself and transform the same character into two seemingly different characters is just talent that most people just don't have. If you haven't seen Malcolm X, I highly, highly recommend it. It is a great film. Guys, Denzel kills this role. Number three. And number three was hard. I went back and forth with a few roles. I went back and forth with Crimson Tide, with Flight. I really liked Flight. But I ultimately landed with Fences. And the reason I went with Fences is because I think Denzel portrayed this character so well because it was something he was so interested in and something he felt strongly about. Denzel, although he was very young around the time this film is supposed to be taking place, he could probably relate to this character a lot. And it's a great story, about an African American family that, it's ultimately, a bumpy ride. And this film is very minimal. It takes place in like one location for the most part. There's not a ton of characters, but you get great performances throughout the entire film. And Denzel and Viola, you would believe they're a real married couple. They just blew me away with how much emotion those two conveyed, and they both showed us why they're two of the best actors of their generation. And Denzel in this movie, he did make me cry. I'm not gonna lie, I did tear up at this film um, because the honesty that he portrayed in this character, although he's not the best man, he's a flawed man, a very flawed man. The honesty he portrayed here is just, it felt so real. And I felt like I was watching a real family go through these real things. And a lot of stuff that happens in this film is heartbreaking. And, it's some tough subject matter. But I just was blown away by what he delivered here. And the fact that he directed this too was just insane. It just shows the talent level to direct a film like this and you kill it like this with very minimal experiences behind the camera. It's just very impressive. Number six, Dustin Hoffman. Dustin was born August 1937 in LA. He knew he wanted to study the arts at a young age and went to school for music, later studying acting. By 1966, he was starring in the Broadway play Eh? His breakout role came in 1967's The Graduate, one of the best movies ever. He then went on to star in 1969's Midnight Cowboy as Rizzo the Rat, which earned him an Oscar nomination. He shows his range in the 70s, appearing in A Little Big Man, Papillon, Marathon Man, Lenny, All the President's Men, and Kramer versus Kramer, which he also earned an Academy Award nomination for. In 1988, he played Ray in Rain Man alongside Tom Cruise, for which won him the Academy Award and is one of the best on-screen performances of all time. In the 21st century, he played many comedic roles and other various types of supporting roles, including Finding Neverland, I Heart Huckabees, Meet the Fockers, and Little Fockers, while also lending his voice to the Kung Fu Panda series. Dustin is one of the most versatile and emotionally vulnerable actors of all time. He's an everyday type of man, playing characters that can often be related to and playing anti-heroes. Dustin makes acting look effortless and blends into his roles with ease, leaving the viewer often forgetting they are watching a performance and not a real person living day to day. His body of work and versatility makes him one of the most respected, influential, and talented actors of all time. The best Dustin Hoffman roles. Number one, my personal favorite, Rain Man. Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. I saw Rain Man very young. Rain Man came out before I was born, but I saw it at a very young age. And when I was young, I thought that this guy had a mental disability. I didn't realize, I think I was just too young to realize what acting actually was. You know, when you're a kid, you associate actors with real life until, you get a little bit older, probably like 9, 10 years old, and you realize they're actors. I was probably like 6 when I seen this movie or something like that. I thought this guy was mental. I did. He is absolutely amazing. And then when I watched the film later, when I was probably 18, I just was like, holy hell, this guy, he's just so believable. At that point, I had seen him in plenty of films. I was very into films by then. I just still am blown away by his performance in Rain Man. What he does in this film is he elegantly approaches such a sensitive subject matter and does it with grace and respect. And he ultimately makes you love this guy. He ultimately makes you kind of jealous that he has the ability he has. And I think it's a great film to push forward the awareness of mental disabilities and to show that having a mental disability isn't the worst thing ever and it's not the end of the world. As a matter of fact, sometimes it can be a gift. And Dustin Hoffman, this is one of the most deserved Oscar wins ever. And this is easily top 5 best on-screen performances of all time. Argue with me if you want. Number 2, Midnight Cowboy. My man Rizzo the Rat. Dustin Hoffman plays that real New York guy in here. Hey, I'm walking over here. I love Dustin Hoffman in this film. If you haven't seen Midnight Cowboy, I will say this. I don't think it's a film that everyone would particularly enjoy. It did win Best Picture, but Midnight Cowboy, it's an interesting film. Some people, I will say, I know it wouldn't be for everybody, but I do love Midnight Cowboy. I think the acting between Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman is incredible, but in particular, Dustin Hoffman playing Rizzo. He makes you think he's this sickly, kind of beat down, run down guy who's just dirty and gross and just, he makes you think he is really a rat and kind of disgusting. And that is the essence of his character, but man, he's embodies this emotion that makes you love him. He's like your little boy, your little homie. He's a ride or die. He's this guy that you just ultimately want to hang out with, even though he's one of the sickest dudes. He's one of those guys that no matter what, he's going to make sure his homies are taken care of. And he's admirable in that way. And I'm sorry, in 1969, I just could not think of any other actor who could probably give a performance like this. And there's tons of great actors who were around back then. I just think Dustin Hoffman did this so well that no one else could do it right. If you have not seen Midnight Cowboy, you got to watch it just to see Rizzo the Rat alone. Number 3, The Graduate. One of my favorite Dustin Hoffman movies, but not my favorite Dustin Hoffman performance. Dustin Hoffman, the reason this is a good Dustin Hoffman performance is because he plays that young, early 20s kind of fresh, young, naive guy very, very well. It's a coming of age story, and I think Dustin Hoffman he embodies this character so well. And a lot of guys can relate to this character because any young man who's graduated high school, went on and graduated college, and came out and not quite knowing exactly where they are in life at that moment can relate to this character. When you're 21 years old, you're getting into all kinds of weird stuff. You're trying to find yourself still. You're still trying to figure things out. And that's what Dustin Hoffman's ultimately doing here. And what the movie's ultimately about is super funny. Every guy has that kind of fantasy at some point in their life or another, about the hot older chick. And, it's great, but it's a great coming of age story that, you know, tells a typical story of a lot of young American men at the time. But Dustin Hoffman's performance in this is what makes it special. He has this charisma to it that just feels so right for the film. And he just plays this character so well. And you could tell from this movie that this guy was going to have a bright future in acting, and he did. Guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of Don't Forget the Popcorn. Next episode will be part 2. We will have numbers 5 through 1 with some honorable mentions. Guys, make sure you comment down below and let me know what you think of 10 through 6. And make sure you subscribe so you can stay tuned for part 2. Guys, I will see you next time. And don't forget the popcorn.